Well, that was weird. I'm hanging out in what was the storytime room when we had story times, and hopefully we'll get back to that. Here to tell you about a really cool book. Um, excuse me. And yeah, so the I made some notes, so I might be referring to them. Okay, I usually do that. So the book is called Dancing at the Pity Party. It's a graphic memoir by Tyler Fader. And in this book, Fader tells the story of when she was. So the summer after her freshman year in college, which was pretty tough just because she's anxious and had some social anxiety and stuff. Her mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And then on spring break of her sophomore year, her mother died. I know that sounds like a very dark book. However, this book will make you cry, but it'll also make you laugh. The illustrations are fantastic. It's super honest and doesn't sugarcoat things, but also it's weirdly refreshing, and you learn things. Like if you haven't ever lost someone really close to you, and I'm terrified of my mother dying. I have lost someone very close to me in my life as a young person, but it was another young person. It was not someone in my family. And but this is just a tremendous memoir because it'll make you smile, even as it's making you feel sad. And I just want to go through it a little bit. The book begins with her describing Ma, what she calls her mom, and how basically awesome she is. And also how, sometimes annoying she is, but really about how fantastic she is and the things that she does that are really fantastic. Things she teaches her, just parts of her personality, what she looks like, how she's obsessed with eyebrows and like plucking eyebrows. And it's a pretty great just sort of expression of, I know not everyone has an ideal relationship with their mother. I'm very aware of that, but it's sort of a great expression of that positive, beautiful relationship between a child and their mother. And so that's how it starts. And it moves on briefly to sort of talk about her first year at college and how it was awkward, and it took her a while to make friends, and she's not into drinking or partying, so like that was weird, and she was like nervous and worried about lots of stuff, and it was it ended up well, but it was intense. And her mom had dropped her off and helped her unpack, and picked her up, at the end of the school year in funny ways. And so what's also quite odd is that as she goes to college, her family, she has 2 younger sisters, they moved to Florida, and they had lived sort of outside Chicago. And so at the end of the year, she goes home for the first time to this new home in Florida, which is just weird, And that summer, her mother is experiencing all this belly pain, and it kind of annoys Tyler because she's sort of always talking about it, and but it's serious, and they start to try and investigate, what is it, and they just have test after test after test after test. They're going from different doctor to different doctor, and eventually she is diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and so she starts chemo, and Tyler basically learns, firsthand, what that does to somebody. Their hair falls out, and she starts getting neuropathy. So she's like, her hands are shaking, and her skin changes, and her eyes change, and she doesn't look the same, and she's tired. She's really tired. And so they still, have fun together, but she's exhausted all the time. And and as this is happening, Tyler's sort of like, should I go back to college? Should I stay here and help? And Ma, being a mother who loves her child and who wants her child to achieve everything that child wants, says, no, you have to go back to college. You're going back to college. So she goes back, and she shows us, Tyler shows us, I want to try and show you this illustration. You won't really be able to see it, but it's pretty great because she talks about how like herself has to split, sort of, right? Into like her happy at school, and then like her worried and freaking out for herself. Let me just find the page. She talks about it's compartmentalization. So there's fun school Tyler and grief panic Tyler. So I'm just trying to get that on the screen as well as I can. And so there are two of her, and it describes like all the the different sort of feelings and behaviors she has to do. And then on the other side is a graph. Should I pick up the phone? Because she's always terrified to pick up the phone, that it's going to be bad news. And so during the school year, she sees her mom a few times, and she talks about every time she sees her, she was worse than last. She's getting sicker. And I can't help, I just laughed at this picture because it's an amazing picture of the metaphor that she was feeling. So let me hold it up here. So try and get it all on screen. So she's talking to her, and she's like, where are you? And her mom's like, I'm in the white car. And she's like, oh, hi. And then she gets out, and she sees her, and a huge thing falls in her because her mom looks so different. She's just like, thunk, gets like knocked out, right? And then there's this, comparison here between old mom and new mom, about like what they look like, and also like all the physical problems she's having. And it's when she gets nailed by that anvil. I mean, it's like a funny image, but it also evokes exactly the feeling of like, holy beep, right? I mean, it shakes her. I mean, it hits her right where it hurts, and so she goes home over winter break, and she talks about their visit, and like how they're trying to have a good time together. And then she gets a call. Oh no. Over winter break, they all fly to Chicago for her mom to have a surgery. And it turns out that she didn't have the kind of cancer that they thought she had. She has a different kind of cancer, and they tell her that it's actually curable. So there's this hope, right? There's this hope that actually her mom will be able to beat it. And, she's just sort of hanging on to this optimism, right? So she goes back to school. And then spring break comes. And she flies home over spring break, and she's a great day before she goes. She's hanging out with friends, and things seem good because she's got this hope, And so she lands in the airport, and she calls her dad, and she's like, "Where are you parked?" Her dad's picking her up, and he's like, "I'll be there in 45 minutes." She's like, "What? Why are you so late?" And he just says, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's been a busy night." And he picks her up, and they go to the hospital. And she didn't even, she didn't know her mom was in the hospital. And she gets to the hospital, and her mom looks horrible. And she's also she's not really in her right mind. And she sort of fantasizes that, oh, well, she's been in the hospital before, like, we'll go home and, like, go back to being, like, weird, but still having fun, But it's actually not the case. And they learn from the doctor that she's dying, and the best thing that they can do is make her comfortable. And she has not been home from the airport. So she and her sisters are there, and they're trying to decide, and one of her sisters says, I need to be with her. Another sister says, I can't see this happen. And she's sort of trying to decide, and she's working on her computer, and the computer starts dying, and she realizes, oh, the charger's in my mom's room. And she walks in, and her mom is literally about to die. And she sees her die. And her little sister is, like, curled up next to her. And so she goes over, and she just squeezes, after she's died, she just squeezes her hand and says, I love you. And then they leave, and they can't go home. So they go to this hotel, and it's this horrible night, in this weird place. And her aunt, who is a wonderful character as comic, sort of buys them fresh clothes, all of that sort of stuff. And it's the worst night ever. Then, right then they have to start planning the funeral, like, just super busy. They have to plan everything. They're Jewish, so they have to plan the funeral as fast as possible. The funeral is going to be back in Illinois, so they go back to Illinois, and then the funeral service, which is agonizing, and the receiving line, which is basically hell, to be honest. And she somehow manages to get through it, and but I wanted to show you this other page, which I thought was pretty fantastic and a pretty great piece of advice for when you do have to go to a funeral and you are on the other side of that receiving line. And I know I've been on that other side, and you're trying to think of what to say, And she gives you some do's and don'ts. And I thought that these were pretty amazing. she's, a little brutal about it, but I think, that's what you need. That's what's so great about this book, is that she doesn't pull punches. She tells it how it is. And anyway, I'm not going to read all of them, but they're great. And especially the don'ts are a lot of things that people might do. So, and not intentionally, but so after the funeral, they have the Shiva, which is, a week where the family mourns in their home. The first night, everyone is invited to come. But after that, it's just the family together sitting Shiva. And this sort of experience of sitting Shiva and, the first night being a little more stressful. And occasionally when people come, it can also be stressful. But she talks about the favorite part was when her mother's childhood friend came. And her mother's childhood friend just told her stories about when they were kids. And she said, that is the best thing you could do, talk about the person, like tell me stories that I don't know. And I love that piece. She also talks about one night she and her sisters and her cousins decide to take a break from Shiva and go bowling. And she talks about the shock of going out into the world with all of these people smiling and laughing. And it's like this overload of just like light and like just, it's sort of unbearable. And she tries to like pretend like she's having fun bowling, but really it's painful in a different way. And then she ends. She has to go back to school. And at first she can't. Her dad drives her to school, and she can't get out of the car. She's just crying. And the next time she does, and it's so hard to go back to. She describes it as the new normal, and she tells stories about being in a big lecture class, and they give out index cards, and you're supposed to, write down the things that define you. And, she writes down all the things that always define her, and then right at the end, she realizes there's a new one. I lost my mother at a young age. And she sort of has to come to recognize that this is now part of her identity. And she talks about things she hates, like Mother's Day, and how hard certain things are, and she doesn't know how to deal with them. Like when a little kid asks you about your mommy and daddy. But it's also, I don't want to make it seem too dark because it's honest, but it's also, and the illustrations play a big role in this. They're great illustrations, and there's a sense of humor sort of pulling her through it. Humor's kind of the wrong word, but there's also a great part where she talks about like meeting someone else who's lost their mom at a young age, and like the Dead Moms Club is what she calls it. And she has this fantasy of like a Dead Moms Club where they would have like all these places that were in the club that would make fun, that would make sense for them. So there would be like infinite amounts of like good tissues for crying. There would be like a punching bag. there would be, let me see what else. I don't know exactly what pages it was on, so hold on. So there would be like watching cheesy movies. Oh, a soundproof room for just screaming. Cozy like couches. And just like a play, and how she made friends with some of these people, and how it was so great to not have to worry about how to interact, and how they all shared this thing that really does impact your identity. And towards the end, I want to read this one bit because I think it's great. If there's one thing I've learned in the last 10 years, I've been wandering through loss. It's that grief is messy. Despite what media cliches have led us to believe, it doesn't follow any real rules. It's like a traveling carnival ride. Noisy and dark and confusing and smelly and weird. And like a rickety traveling carnival ride, it's a lot less scary when you're not alone. And I thought that was quite beautiful. Because, there is a lot of BS out there about how people deal with grief. There are these like stages and blah, blah, blah. She actually has a page on that where she like shows the stages and then she shows herself, and it's like all these crazy lines running between everything. And having grieved, that's so much more true. And the other thing about grief is that it's not like it ends. The weight lifts, but then it can come back and punch you in the gut so hard at surprising times, and it'll be back on you, and it never leaves you. It changes, the weight can lift so that you feel like you can breathe, but it's never gone. And I just think this is a beautiful, beautiful book about a sort of grief that I've never experienced, but I felt like it gave me an eye into it and made me feel some empathy towards this kind of grief that I've never experienced, and also a lot of knowledge about how to be a friend to someone grieving. It's also so fun. I mean, it's sad, but it's so, her illustrations, her wit, it's a great book to read. And I super, super, super duper recommend it. So the title's, look at the cover. It's awesome. She's dancing with her mom, who's a ghost, in the rain, or tears, and on her grave. And it's beautiful. So I definitely recommend Dancing at the Pity Party. In other news, what other news is there? There's a program tomorrow if you want to come out and do some drawing to some of my super weird prompts that I'm just going to make up, and they're going to be really weird. And you can draw whatever you want in response to these prompts. I'm just having some fun coming up with weird things. And depending on whether people show up, I'm going to order some food for y'all. And it's going to be outside. We can't have programming inside, so it's going to be in the courtyard. And we might also play Exquisite Corpse. I don't know if you know that name, but it's a drawing game that can be pretty funny. And yeah, so it's going to be chill. The idea is for you guys to just spend some time with other people your age and hang out and draw and have fun with it and be silly and, have a few moments of joy because we need it. We all need some moments of joy. And for me to meet some people and for you to meet me and realize that I'm not, well, I am weird, but I'm not a weirdo. I'm a good person. I think most people who know me would say I'm a good person. And I want to start earning your respect. And just to be clear, I know I need to do that. Respect is earned. And I know you don't know me, so why would you respect me if you don't know me? So I want to get to know you so that you can get to know me and hopefully respect me. I also want to make sure that everybody out there is taking care of themselves, taking care of up here and here. Because it's a tough time, People have been, getting optimistic. The vaccines are going, and I heard on the radio that they've just finished some testing, and that for ages 12 to 16, and it came out brilliantly, so they're going to the FDA with that. But also, I'm really hoping that we can get vaccinations up before we get sort of hit by one of these variants. I know last week or so, numbers have been up in Pueblo, so I'm a little worried about that. We need to keep, being smart about our physical safety, but we also need to be smart about our mental and psychological safety, because this is something that, we've had a year of trauma, and I've definitely been affected by it, and I don't know anyone who hasn't. So I want to make sure that all the teens who have a relationship with Rawlings are taking care of themselves, and when you're really stressed out, you learn some things to help you with that stress. Whenever we open, I'm actually going to have a little corner for sort of self-soothing, but sort of grounding yourself in your five senses. But also, if that sounds silly, because what you're going through is much worse than that, then I want you to get the help that every single person deserves. And down along the bottom here, I've got the Colorado Crisis Line running, and they are professional, confidential, and they can help you. They can help you get some help. You should also talk to an adult you trust and have them get you some help. There's no shame in getting help, okay? It's like, if you twisted your ankle and it was incredibly painful, would you not go to the doctor? Of course you'd go to the doctor. Well, if you're in pain, and it's psychic pain, you should go to the doctor. It's exactly the same, okay? It doesn't matter why you're in this pain. You need to go to the doctor and figure out why you're in the pain and what can be done to help you with that pain. Okay? I've been doctors, they want to help you. Therapists want to help you. I want you to get help. Okay? So don't hide it. Stigma is a bunch of BS. And I'm worried about all the young people in Pueblo. And I might not know you, but I care about you and I love you and I don't want anything bad to happen to you. So, and if you're friends, talk to somebody. If you're worried about a friend, talk to somebody about that friend, okay? Take care of each other. That's how we're getting through this. We have to take care of each other. Okay. Stop talking at you about taking care of yourselves. Because that can be annoying after a while. Yeah. I know. I can be annoying after a while. I could also do really weird voices for no reason. You should hear me talk to my cats. I'm weird. I sing to my cats and I make up songs and I can't sing. Anyway, my cats are awesome. You'll hear about them, if you get to know me. Their names are Vladimir and Barnabas. And I will see you next week. Take care. Read a book. Listen to a book. Read a graphic novel. Read a comic. Draw. Write. Be creative. Okay? It's good for your soul. It's good for your mind. Also, get outside. It's going to be nice and warm. Yay! Okay. Take care. I'll see you next week.